Picture this. You're walking home on a totally ordinary Tuesday. The sun is setting, the traffic is humming, everything is routine. Then, for no logical reason, your feet just stop. You aren't tired, you aren't checking your phone, but suddenly the idea of taking one more step along this familiar path feels physically impossible.
Yeah.
Most of us panic in a moment like this. We try to force ourselves forward, thinking we're just burned out or, being dramatic. We are conditioned to believe that life's major changes happen with a bang. The resignation letter, the breakup text, the moment we finally shout, "I quit."
Right, the big action.
We think that action is where the story changes. But there is a specific Japanese perspective that suggests we have it all wrong. It argues that the true turning point isn't the explosion of action at all. It's this weird, silent tremble that happens way before. It's that split second on the sidewalk where you haven't moved an inch, but your internal compass has already quietly, violently swung in a new direction.
A completely new direction.
In the West, when we hit a crossroads, we demand an immediate answer, left or right. But in Japan, they have a specific word for the stillness before you choose, the terrifying but necessary pause where the old life no longer fits, but the new one hasn't started. It's called Kiro. And understanding why you are frozen there might be the most important realization of your life. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're starting with this incredibly vivid emotional moment, that feeling of being frozen, where the old path just rejects you. We're so conditioned to label that feeling as failure or paralysis, but this whole idea suggests we should treat it as a profound signal. So our mission in this deep dive is to move past the immediate terror of that Kiro moment,
right,
and understand how embracing the specific mechanics of necessary stillness, both psychologically and structurally, is actually the key to intentional progress.
Exactly. This is all about transforming that fear into function. We're going to explore how Japanese philosophical perspectives on structure and emptiness, namely Kiro and another concept, may offer a potent, practical alternative to the relentless Western drive for immediate, explicit action.
We just mistake movement for momentum.
We do, all the time.
Yeah.
What we'll demonstrate is how deliberately carving out space, a strategic pause, provides the clarity you need for resilient leadership, for genuine innovation, and for a fundamentally more sustainable pace in these highly complex, globalized environments we all work in. The pause isn't a lapse. It's a recalibration phase.
So let's start there. That initial feeling of being physically frozen, it speaks to a massive internal gear shift, that kind of existential gridlock where the map you were following suddenly just turns blank.
It is. And the common reaction we see when people reach that psychological crossroads in life or in business is sheer panic. The modern expectation is speed. Decide, execute, report. When faced with Kiro, most people experience this sudden physiological panic, a surge of adrenaline that's demanding choose or be left behind.
Right. Do something, anything.
Exactly. We rush into action precisely to escape the discomfort of not knowing. But this frantic pace often means we bypass the critical internal processing that we desperately need. We aren't solving the underlying issue of misalignment. We're just suppressing the symptom.
Which is why you see so many high achievers hit a wall.
It's precisely why. This is why highly productive individuals often hit chronic burnout. They've perfected the art of frantic motion, mistaking it for genuine progress until the body simply forces the pause. The system just crashes because the operator never stopped for maintenance.
So the panic is the distraction. It's a distraction from the genuine, deeper reorientation that's actually occurring. If we can just honor that internal shift, that silent tremble you described, we realize the system is recalibrating, not failing. But I think a lot of us struggle because we don't have a cultural framework for valuing that emptiness. We see a blank space and our instinct is to fill it immediately.
Precisely. And this is where that other concept comes in. This internal recalibration is culturally framed by the concept of ma. Ma, which translates roughly to negative space or inwardness, is absolutely fundamental in Japanese aesthetics and philosophy.
And crucially, it's not nothingness. It's not a lack of something.
It is not nothingness. That is the key distinction. It's space that is activated by intention. It is the structured, purposeful void that defines and elevates the components around it.
We hear about ma a lot in art, like in ikebana, the flower arranging, where the space between the branches is just as important as the branches themselves. But where else does this concept shape the Japanese worldview? How does it become an integrated philosophy rather than just a design principle?
It's everywhere. Ma governs rhythm, time, and social structure. Think of no theater, for example. Unlike most Western dramas, which really rely on continuous dialogue and rapid narrative progression, No uses these intense periods of silence and extremely deliberate, measured movement.
Right. It can feel very slow if you're not used to it.
It can. But the audience isn't just waiting for the next line. They are actively absorbing the weight and the implication of the interval between the movements. That silence carries the emotional context. It is full of meaning. Similarly, you can look at Japanese architecture. Beyond the tokonoma alcove you might see for displaying a scroll, there's the linked concept of oku inwardness, or depth.
Oku.
Right. Oku isn't simply the back of the room. It's a progression of nested spaces, where each step you take inward increases the formality, the privacy, and the contemplation required.
That's fascinating. So the architecture itself is literally dictating your pace and your mental preparation. It's forcing a moment of decompression before you reach the core space.
Exactly. The space is intentionally layered to force a mental decompression. And maybe the most famous example of this intentional slowing down is the tea ceremony, charu. Every single step, from the ritual cleaning of the utensils to the heating of the water and the precise presentation of the bowl, it's all slow, it's ritualized, it's intentional. The entire ceremony is a structure built around the pause.
It's the opposite of grabbing a coffee to go.
It's the complete opposite. It forces the participants to engage fully with the present moment, to empty their minds of all that external rush. This is not arbitrary slowness. It is the discipline of pace, creating a sacred ma in time.
Okay, I think I understand the principle now. Go slow to go fast, but how does applying the deep structured space of Ma actually translate into being faster or better in a hyper-competitive, time-driven world? It still feels a little counterintuitive.
It achieves clarity and prevents systemic failure. That's how. Rushing creates entropy. It forces quick decisions that often multiply errors and require endless, costly corrections later on. When we talk about that Kiro moment on the sidewalk being an imposed Ma, it's the body and mind screaming for that deliberate reflection. If you skip that reflection, you miss crucial systemic signals, a market shift, an employee misalignment, a personal value conflict, which leads you to relentlessly optimize the wrong path.
So the pause is a necessary diagnostic tool.
Absolutely. Pausing allows you to reread the environment, to reestablish your internal alignment, and then execute the correct step with singular focus. I once worked with a multinational firm that refused to pause its product launch cycle despite mounting internal fatigue.
I can see where this is going.
You can. They launched 3 products in rapid succession, believing speed was their competitive edge. The second 2 products failed spectacularly, and not because of technical issues, but because the strategic intent, the Kiro decision, was based on outdated market data that they were too busy to pause and re-examine. The financial and reputational cost of those 2 rushed products far, far outweighed the time they saved by skipping a strategic pause. That one intentional, structured step that emerges from clarity will always be faster and cheaper than 3 rushed, misaligned steps. And moving that concept into the professional realm, the paradox we encounter is that the pressure for speed often results in strategic weakness. Senior leaders are expected to maintain growth, but frequently they report feeling, functional yet deeply numb or disconnected. They're trapped in this cycle of production without genuine processing.
And the typical remedy offered is often just resilience, telling leaders to absorb more workload, more stress, and more operational demands. But that just sounds like asking them to run faster on a broken track.
Completely. Resilience is inherently defensive. It's a measure of how much impact you can absorb before breaking. Strategic pace management, which is informed by Kiro, is proactive. It's the intentional design of your energy expenditure. Leaders have to cultivate the self-awareness and, just as importantly, the organizational permission to hold space for silence, for deep strategy, and for simply being human, instead of constantly being stuck in a state of performance.
Because if the leader doesn't create that ma in their own schedule, the entire organization ends up running on fumes.
That's it. They mistake sheer activity for meaningful progress.
This means the modern business environment really demands discernment over pure agility. Agility is reactive. You're responding quickly to change. Discernment is proactive. It's understanding which change to respond to and which potential path or Kiro to ignore entirely.
The intentional pause facilitates precisely this shift. It moves the focus from frantic goal setting, which is simply aiming to hit the next quarterly target, to true meaning making. It's understanding the deeper purpose of those targets and how they align with the long-term systemic health of the organization. It transforms raw output into actionable insight. This is where the strategic value of the pause is really realized, because it prevents optimization efforts from being deployed against the wrong problem.
You mentioned working with a C-suite client who experienced this exact cycle of producing without processing. Can you tell us more about that? How did implementing regular pauses translate into tangible strategic changes for them beyond just, feeling less stressed?
Sure. This client was the CEO of a mid-sized tech company that was experiencing explosive growth, but also struggling with severe staff burnout and turnover. He was technically brilliant, hitting every operational target, but he was completely disconnected. His default mode was speed. He believed in filling every available minute.
Production trap.
Exactly what we called him. We introduced a non-negotiable 2-hour reflection and synthesis window every Friday afternoon, and we explicitly marked it as not a planning session, but a pause for processing.
And the shift wasn't just emotional.
It was measurable in his communication. His numbness manifested as poor listening skills and delegation failure. He was so fast he'd often finish people's sentences or just take the task back because it was faster to do it himself than to explain it.
I think we all know someone like that.
We do. And during one tense staff meeting, rather than filling the silence that followed a contentious proposal, he paused. He took a breath, a deliberate act of man. And he simply repeated the last point a junior manager had made and asked only, "Tell me more about the implications of that."
Wow.
That small, deliberate act of presence completely shifted the dynamic in the room. He started noticing architectural flaws in their operational process that his previous speed had completely obscured. By slowing down his reaction time, he allowed his discernment to finally surface.
That's a powerful illustration of how presence becomes the ultimate insight. So for other executives who might be listening and wanting to institutionalize this, how do you structure that retrospection and look ahead practice to make it rigorous and not just, aimless reflection?
It absolutely requires structure. Otherwise, it just becomes unstructured worry or a list of complaints. We focus on internal alignment through 3 key areas, and we move beyond those generalized corporate values into specific behavioral metrics.
Okay, so what's the first one?
First is identifying key teachings and behavioral patterns. This step goes way beyond quantitative metrics. The key questions are behavioral. Where did I lead from a place of genuine curiosity this year? And where did I lead from defensiveness or fear? What specific pattern led to my most significant leadership failure? Was it delegating poorly, waiting too long to intervene, or constantly reacting to external noise? The goal here is to surface the self-sabotaging behaviors that occur when pace overtakes presence. For instance, realizing the pattern is, I always agree to new projects on a Monday morning when I'm energized, but I regret them by Wednesday afternoon when execution begins.
That moves way beyond performance analysis to a qualitative diagnosis of self. It's almost therapeutic.
It can be. The second step is reflection on lived values. It demands the executive name specific, recent moments of pride, focusing specifically on how they showed up for others and for themselves when they were under pressure.
So it's a values audit.
It's a values audit driven by anecdote. If integrity is a core value, they must identify a specific, difficult meeting where they chose an honest but painful decision over a convenient lie. If they can't name these moments, the gap between the espoused value, the list on the wall, and the lived value, the behavior under stress, becomes crystal clear. And that demands action.
And then the final component translates all of this self-knowledge into a concrete plan, connecting that psychological pause to the structured route forward.
Yes. The third step is naming specific, measurable shifts for the coming year. This is a declaration of behavioral intention, not a business strategy.
So an example would be?
For example, my shift will be reducing my immediate email response time by 50% for external requests to force greater delegation and allow for deeper focus on long-term strategy. Or I will introduce 15 minutes of silent, device-free walking before every major client meeting to ensure I enter the room with intention, not residual reactivity from the last call.
I see.
These specific behavioral changes establish the intentional pathway, the Kiro that's created during the structured pause, the Ma. This whole practice fosters change that is rooted in self-knowledge, which makes the transformation resilient and long-lasting.
This is where the concept of Kiro gets truly intriguing for me, because we pivot from the personal crisis to the systemic structured meaning. You're saying the Japanese term translates very precisely to circuit, pathway, or route, especially in high-level technology development.
It does, and this technical translation gives us the necessary blueprint for applying that psychological pause. The pause on the sidewalk provides the internal reorientation. The circuit definition provides the map for the successful external structured application of that reorientation.
So intention requires structure.
It's the insistence that intention requires a robust structure to become scalable innovation.
In computing, circuits are the fundamental core of logic. So why is Kiro as a circuit such a powerful symbol right now, especially with all the new AI-powered development environments coming out?
Because it speaks directly to logic unfolding in an era of rapid automation. Whether we're dealing with silicon or abstract code, a circuit is the definitive, meticulous path for information flow. It ensures that complex inputs reliably result in predictable, desired outputs. The introduction of large language models into coding has drastically accelerated speed, but it's also introduced a massive risk of architectural drift and logic corruption.
Okay, this brings us back to that critique you mentioned of vibe coding. Walk us through exactly how relying too much on AI for small code snippets can cause the overall architectural structure to fail in these really complex distributed systems.
Okay, so modern software is rarely built as one single piece. We're dealing with microservices, serverless functions, distributed databases, a massive interconnected network.
Right.
Earlier AI coding assistants focused purely on local optimization, generating quick function or auto-completing a line of code. The human developer felt fast, but that generated code often had no awareness of the overall architectural contract. It didn't know the system standard for dependency injection, or how states should be managed across 3 separate services, or what the specific security protocols were for data flowing out of a specific region.
So the AI solves the immediate, localized problem writing the function, but it fails to adhere to the global architecture because the humans skipped the foundational design step.
Exactly. If the human developer skips that foundational Kiro pause, that strategic step where they should be writing a detailed requirements.md and a formal design.md file, they're essentially instructing the AI to build structures without a blueprint.
And the code works, but
the resulting code works in isolation, but it creates technical debt, security vulnerabilities, and systemic fragility because the overall integrity is sacrificed for local speed. That's vibe coding. It feels productive, but the fundamental logic circuit is corrupted.
So a Kiro-informed development environment insists on the human developer maintaining the role of the architect, defining that high-level pathway before the AI is allowed to execute the wiring.
That is the essential collaboration model. The human remains the master planner. They lay out the circuit board by defining the strict constraints, the specifications, the interfaces between all the distributed components. The AI then operates as a hyper-efficient implementation engine, wiring up the board according to those defined constraints. This ensures the output is not just fast, but fundamentally aligned with the original strategic intent, the true Kiro. This moves AI from being a simple speed tool to being a structured, collaborative force that actually reinforces clarity.
Let's delve into the 3 intricate qualities implied by this concept of a circuit. The source material breaks this down into precision, connection, and evolution. Let's start with precision.
Precision is the bedrock. Circuits are engineered with incredible care. A fractional difference in resistance or a single misplaced connection can cause total system failure. Embracing Kiro means aiming for that level of exact precision in all professional output.
Which means?
This translates to structured designs that are unambiguous, thorough tests that cover every possible edge case, and spot-on documentation. It is the absolute opposite of sloppy work done quickly. It means the human developer must spend 3 hours perfectly crafting the design document, the pause, to save 30 hours of debugging later on.
Okay, that makes sense. Then there's connection, which addresses the complexity of modern interlinked systems.
Right. A circuit is, by definition, a comprehensive network. In systems architecture, failure often occurs at the boundaries between components. Kiro demands that developers understand the full scope of those connections, not just within a single file of code, but how data flows between distributed systems. And how the high-level business concept, the why of the feature, connects directly to the low-level implementation details, the how. It fosters a connected, holistic development process. It ensures that the team understands how their small, fast code snippet fits into the vast strategic architecture.
It forces systems thinking. You can't just optimize your single microservice without knowing the downstream impact on the other 6 microservices it communicates with.
Exactly. It mandates collaborative architecture. And finally, the third quality is evolution. The concept of the circuit is not static. It's constantly improving and adapting. I mean, look at the history of computing, from massive vacuum tubes to the microchip revolution.
The structure itself changes to meet new, unforeseen demands.
It adapts and it leaps forward. Kiro, as a development philosophy, suggests that the tools themselves must constantly push the boundaries of current methodologies. It's not just about optimizing the current process, it's about anticipating the next leap in development paradigms.
Like what?
Perhaps integrating security structures or formal verification directly into the circuit design process itself. It positions the framework as being inherently adaptive to the future of technology, ensuring the pathway is always the most advanced one available. Ultimately, this definition of Kiro is a master plan, guiding you through formidable complexity along the clearest, most robust path to innovation.
So now we can step back and look at where this deep cultural valuation for stillness, for structure, and for precision really originates. It's embedded in foundational expressions of Japanese philosophy and may be most clearly seen in the systematic approach to mastering the complex writing system of Kanji.
This provides a perfect mirror for the philosophy we've been discussing. The task of mastering the Japanese writing system. I mean, thousands of ideographic characters, each with multiple readings and contextual dependencies, is truly immense.
It's daunting.
It is. Yet the Japanese approach makes it manageable not by simplifying the task, but by meticulously systematizing it. It prioritizes structure and pacing over a frantic attempt at rote speed.
We, in the West, often view memorizing thousands of symbols as a purely overwhelming task, something that just demands brute force effort. How does the systematic learning method reflect this underlying philosophy of structure over speed?
It's the rigid, logical control over the curriculum. The methodology is designed to ease the task by making it connected. Characters are introduced in a very precise pedagogical order. The simpler, more frequent characters come first.
Okay.
And crucially, as the learner progresses, the compound words used to demonstrate the readings of a new character only use characters that the student has already fully mastered in previous lessons.
So that creates constant built-in reinforcement, a system of sporadic reappearance that ensures the foundation is continually being strengthened.
It prevents the knowledge from being isolated. It connects the new learning back to the known base. Moreover, the learner knows exactly which characters they have covered fully at any given time. This transparency, this clear, trackable pathway, this Kiro, removes that debilitating feeling of being overwhelmed by an infinite task.
You're always on a structured route, never just lost in the chaos of information overload.
Never. And the structural logic isn't just in the teaching order. It's physically embedded within the characters themselves, offering the ultimate pattern recognition shortcut.
Okay, this is the radical and phonetic idea.
Absolutely. The RMP character. Over 3/4 of the 2,000 essential kanji fall into this category. This structure means the character is essentially divided into two parts that offer you clues. The radical gives you the general area of meaning.
For example?
For example, if you see the water radical, which looks like 3 small drops on the left side of a character, you immediately know the meaning is related to liquid or rivers or washing.
And the phonetic component helps with the sound. Can you give a tangible example of how this pattern recognition works in practice?
Certainly. Let's look at the character uru, which means lake. It uses the water radical on the left for meaning. The right side is the phonetic element iru. Now, that element on its own can be read as ko, and the reading for lake is also ko.
Okay, so it gives you a hint.
It gives you a strong hint. And if you then look at other characters, like reason and permit, you'll find they also share that same phonetic element here, and therefore they often share the same Sino-Japanese on reading of ko or kyu.
Wait, hold on. So by recognizing one small component across 3 entirely different characters, you suddenly acquire the pronunciation and the general meaning for all of them at the same time.
That is the reward for the systematic pause and contemplation. Instead of treating each character as a discrete piece of information that must be crammed, the high-speed, isolated approach, the learner is rewarded for seeking and applying patterns and connections. The system prioritizes understanding the underlying logical structure before you attempt rapid execution. It teaches your mind to see the framework.
This cultural approach, which is embedded in everything from architecture to language mastery, is just a profound contrast to the individualistic, immediate action focus we so often see in the West. Here, personal success is often measured by the speed of our output and our explicit, declarative choices.
It fundamentally is. The Japanese framework values internal stillness and subtle systemic transformation. It informs a far more thorough and contemplative approach to any formidable task, whether it's learning a language or navigating a life transition. It prioritizes understanding the underlying structure and its systematic application, and by doing so, it eases what would otherwise be a paralyzing challenge.
So when you internalize this structured approach,
You don't panic on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
You realize that the pause is the logic of the system working itself out. It's a necessary recalibration before the next, more precise step.
So we began this deep dive by confronting that paralyzing moment on the sidewalk, the moment of Kiro, where personal change feels terrifyingly impossible because we haven't yet identified the next move.
And what we've discovered is that this pause is not a sign of failure, but a mandated requirement for intentionality. Whether you are leading an organization, architecting a complex software system, or navigating a life transition, the path to clarity, to resilient function, and to true innovation demands that you intentionally carve out space, that you embrace the discipline of pace, and that you value the underlying systematic structure, Kiro, as the circuit, that guarantees precision and connected progress.
The ultimate synthesis, then, is that our greatest leaps forward are often preceded by the deepest stillness. By honoring that stillness and structuring the subsequent path, we ensure that our next move is not an escape from discomfort, but a precise, intentional alignment with our renewed purpose. The structure and stillness transform that frightening crossroads into a meticulously engineered pathway forward.